Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the NFL Draft Triple Take presented by UPMC. Mike Prisuta, along with Matt Williamson and Dale Lolley. It's round two of our prep for the NFL Draft. We've gone through the positions group by group, and for this second go-around, we're not listing them so much as we're just throwing in what we have come to learn since the pro days have been conducted, and as the draft grows closer and draws nearer, more information surfacing on some of these guys. Today, we're going to take a look at the wide receiver position. Fellas, we could probably do 4 or 5 of these on wide receivers and not get to everybody. Loaded last year, loaded again this year, but even though we've already done our top 5 and sleepers, it's kind of a changing climate and a changing atmosphere, and there are some guys emerging. Matt, why don't you lead us off?
Yeah, and the biggest thing, I want to talk about Dwayne Eskridge from Western Michigan. But before I do, what really blows me away about this particular receiver class, and the last couple classes have been great, but this one is just loaded with guys like Eskridge that are short, but not tiny. I mean, stocky, most of them. Some of them are on the lean side, but explosive as can be, unbelievable with the ball in their hands. I could probably name 8 to 10 of those that are move option guys. You could pitch it to them. You can jet sweep it to them, orbit motion, screens, run short routes, go deep, explosive out of the slot. There's just more of them than you can believe. And that's why I wanted to bring up Eskridge. I mean, he's from a little bit of a smaller school in the MAC, Western Michigan, 5'9", but 4.38, in the 40, tore up the Senior Bowl. He's really starting to emerge and is on par with some of these other guys that fit that mold that might get a little bit more headlines in Eskridge.
I think one of us had him in his top 5 initially. Who was?
Did you?
That was me. That's right. Nice to see you're realizing the value of the MAC. The MAC has put a lot of players, few receivers, as I recall, at least one in particular. Dale, you love the SEC, so why don't we go back to the SEC, as we invariably do when you talk about draft-eligible players.
Especially skill position players. And Elijah Moore out of Mississippi is another one of those smaller type receivers that Matt was talking about, 5'9", 178. But he ran a 4.3, 540. Then he posted a 4-second short shuttle and a 6.6 on the 3-cone drill. The latter 2 of those, the 4-second short shuttle and the 6.66 3-cone drill, would have been the best at last year's combine. This guy, I think, has played himself into maybe run himself into maybe the end of the first round. I think he could get some consideration there. That's a tough thing to happen in this draft class. I mean, you're talking about 15 receivers that could be in the top 5. I think he kind of separated himself a little bit from some of those other little guys.
Yeah, I got a similar guy that has gotten my attention since the top 5 lists. AMON-RA St. Brown from USC. Dale, you mentioned
St. Brown's brother.
Yeah.
How about the names in that family?
But these kids know how to spell. They don't need spell check. You mentioned one of our previous programs. You were talking about some guy that was really cut. You said, if I looked like him, I'd never wear a shirt. Well, AMON-RA St. Brown is not only in that, if you look like me, you wouldn't wear a shirt club. He didn't wear one at the USC Pro Day, and I get why. He looked the part, but fascinating background. You mentioned brother Equanimous catching passes for the Packers, so it's football family. He did an interview with the NFL Network and talked about how he's always been competitive because he's the youngest of 3 brothers, and they'd go at it even when they're playing Monopoly. Checks all the off-the-field boxes. And some of the comparisons from the coverage of the USC Pro Day, and it was extensive. People are kicking around the names Michael Pittman Jr. we saw last year, Nelson Aguilar, Robert Woods, and the comparisons, guys, were the attitude. I'm going to finish this play even if I'm just blocking. I'm going to catch the ball and run through you. I'm going to compete. I want to knock your head off because it's football out here. And this is a really impressive kid. Daniel Jeremiah even said he saw some similarities in terms of comportment with Juju Smith-Schuster. Speaking of,
you just rattled off a bunch of USC, a bunch of USC wide receivers there that all have some similar traits.
Took you a while to get to Juju, though. I think he's very similar to Juju. Inside out, physical, stature. Yeah, I like him a lot.
There's a lot of them, and that was an interesting workout. We'll get to some of their linemen in subsequent programs, but some other guys. I'll just throw some nuggets out there from the wide receiver position. Anthony Schwartz, his unofficial was 4.26. I don't know if that was actually verified or not, but his 40 was blazing. I mean, the only ones faster at a combine that are official are John Ross, 4.22 in 2017, and Chris Johnson, 4.24 in 2008. And JALEN Camp from Georgia Tech did 30 reps at 225. The combine record for a wide receiver is 27. Matt, how attention-getting are these, test numbers? It's still more about the tape, isn't it, or is it?
For sure, and attention-getting is the way to put it, because day after day, you go check the pro day numbers for that day, and wow, I mean, I'm blown away at every position, but especially this receiver core, and there's so many of them. It worries me a little because in a normal year, I put a lot more stock in the combine numbers than pro days because there's a lot of things working in these guys' favor. They slept in their own bed. They practice there. They're much more comfortable. They are amongst friends and they know every face in the crowd basically that they invited. And the tracks are often very fast.
There's all kinds of factors. And that's why, it's nice to have that combine where everybody's running on the same track under the same conditions. You know what the wind conditions are, none, because you're indoors. So there's a lot there that maybe the track in Indianapolis isn't quite as fast as some of these other places, but it's the same track for everybody. That's the nice thing about, the NFL scouting combine. There are some places, Ohio State's track, for example, when the Ohio State times come in from their pro day, are traditionally faster than other places because they have a fast track. So you kind of have to factor that in this year. And in some cases, you don't know, maybe scouts do, who has a fast track, who doesn't. But weather conditions play a factor in that as well.
What's the temptation to dress everything else first, even if there's maybe two or three that stand out to you, but say, you know what, this position's so loaded, it's going to be last on the priority list and we're still going to be okay. Are teams going to approach it that way, or do you still pick your guy and go get your guy?
I think special players are different. Julio, Calvin, those type of guys, are transcendent type players. And maybe there is a guy like that in this class. I mean, Jamar Chase obviously comes to mind, the Bama guys. But I think history and free agency this year shows the NFL recognizes, why am I going to spend $18 million on a guy that's a, quote, wide receiver one who's 26, 27 years old, when I can take the Steelers approach, use a day two pick year after year, have the cheapest receiver room in the league and one of the best groups of receivers in the league that are only getting better. And you look around the league, who are some of the best receivers in the league? I thought Devontae Adams was probably the best in the league this year. Michael Thomas was the year before that, not first-round picks. Tyreek Hill, DK Metcalf, all the Steelers guys we talked about. I mean, so it's a loaded group, and I'm not saying it's watered down. It's just you can pick whatever you want wherever you want it.
The other thing about it, Matt, is there used to be in fantasy football circles, especially the 3-year rule at the wide receiver.
Right. Oh, that's gone.
You look for a receiver. You look for that receiver going into year 3 who's going to have the breakout. Now these guys come in and they just contribute. Justin Jefferson last year was a monster.
Yeah. Yeah, people shake their head at Corey Davis. Why weren't you awesome in your first year? It took him 3 years like it used to, Right.
Yeah, Dale, we saw Claypool. We got a chance to see Pittman. It just happens for him now. And maybe it's because it has to, because if it's not happening for them, there's plenty others where they came from.
Well, I think it's that, Matt and Mike, and they, these kids are going to passing camps now when they're, 8 years old. And so they're throwing the football before they even get to high school. Then in high school, to your point about your high school never throwing the football, go back and watch a high school game now, and they're throwing the ball around 25, 30 times a game at single-A schools. Mm-hmm. These guys are developed route runners before they even get to college. So by the time they get to the pros, they've already caught 500 passes in games throughout the course of their career.
That's going to do it for wide receivers. As I said at the outset, we could do this all week if we wanted to. But suffice it to say, in summation, if you're an NFL team and you need a wide receiver this year and you don't get one, you just didn't try hard enough because it's not that hard. We'll be coming back at you with more second looks at the eligible positions for the upcoming NFL draft. Until then, for Matt Williamson and Dale Lolley, I'm Mike Prisuta. I want to remind you before we go that you can catch this content on Steelers.com, the Steelers mobile app, and the Steelers official YouTube page. The audio can be heard on the Triple Take podcast and Steelers Nation Radio, and you can access that Triple Take podcast wherever you download your favorite on-demand audio content. That's going to do it for receivers. For the fellas, I'm Mike Prisuta. We will be back again soon with another pre-draft preview. Until then, this has been the NFL Draft Triple Take presented by UPMC.